Every so often you get lucky when browsing the Amazon warehouse, and that's exactly what happened here when I was able to snag the Logitech G Cloud for 190 US dollars or 250 Canadian dollars for my fellow Canadians. Let's do a review. I want to do this one differently. There's a ton of different reviews out there and they all say the same thing, and I'm in complete agreement. The price for this thing is awful. If I had to pay $400 for the Logitech G Cloud, I would never have bought one. So what I want to do is review it based on the price that I got it at, so that in the future when it goes on sale, clearance, or anything like that at a price that's maybe near the 190 US dollars that I paid, it should give an idea to anybody that wants to buy it if it still makes sense at that price point. So that's what today's going to be. And if we're talking about 190 US dollars, I want to see how it compares to other devices in that price range, which is a lot of retro handhelds, but mainly it's the Odin Lite as well as the Amberdic RG405M. The Odin Lite is regularly about $199 and the RG405M is about 180 US dollars. I don't have the Odin Lite physically to compare, so I can just talk about specs and performance from what I've seen, but I do have the RG405M here. Before we jump in, let me tell you about today's video sponsor, UGREEN. UGREEN sent me over their 65 watt and 30 watt charger, and I've been using their 65 watt quite a bit since I got it, and it's been very useful for what I need for charging my ROG Ally, laptop, G Cloud, and other devices. Both are available for $50 and $26 US on Amazon directly. Taking its shoes off and putting them back on is worth every penny. This is honestly the most unique design I've seen on a charger, and so much better than just a plain black charging block like we normally see. The 30 watt option is just a smaller version of this, like a little brother. I honestly love the look of both of these. Let's talk about the 65 watt charger, and there's 3 charging ports on this one that'll do 65 watts if you plug into the one charging port, but then it splits it up if you do all 3 at once. But if you do use that single charging port, you can get an iPhone charged up to 60% in 30 minutes, or you can use it for the ROG Ally to get turbo mode. So there's a lot of beneficial uses to just having that one port in use. But if you wanted to split charging between multiple devices, then take a look on screen and you can see what the wattages are per each port. There's a lot of flexibility here. You have this awesome on-screen display that tells you the charging status in cute little emojis. It'll let you know if it's charging or fully charged. So much better than the Microsoft Teams new emojis. It looks like a cool little robot, and they could probably just use this as their mascot going forward. Like I said before, I've been regularly using this to charge multiple devices like my ROG Ally, Logitech G Cloud, and laptop all at the same time. I've had no issues with temperature or heat. It has a built-in temperature sensor that regulates it, so it's not something that you need to worry about at all. Honestly, these are great chargers. I don't know what else you would need from them, but UGREEN has you covered. Check out the link in my description if you're interested in purchasing either of the 65 watt or the 30 watt charger. Or both. Both works too. Right off the bat, the Logitech G Cloud is larger than both. It has a 7-inch 1080p screen compared to the Odin's 6-inch 1080p screen, and the RG405M's 4-inch 480p screen. The G Cloud and the Odin both have the 16:9 aspect ratio, where the RG405M is 4:3. So what does this all mean? It's just numbers. Well, in a nutshell, the RG405M has a great aspect ratio and screen for older retro games, since that's basically its niche and reason for existing, and also the reason for my channel. But if you're looking for something like PlayStation Portable games, or cloud streaming Xbox games, or newer modern game streaming like Moonlight, you'd want that 16:9 aspect ratio that the Odin and G Cloud give you. It honestly shouldn't be overstated just how nice the screen is on the Logitech G Cloud. It's absolutely fantastic to use, and I would imagine the Odin falls in the same boat. The 405M isn't in the same tier as either of these from that perspective. Battery life is also just insane on the G Cloud, and seems to last forever, which the 405M is no stranger to as well, With Gamma OS, you can get up to about 20 hours playing games. The Odin seems to be the lowest on the totem pole for that, but it's no slouch in that department either. So just looking at specs, you can sort of see the use case here. The G Cloud is really meant for what it was marketed as. It's a streaming device for Xbox, PlayStation, and modern game streaming with Moonlight. And it does those really well. It's perfect for that. But here's the thing, this channel is called Joey's Retro Handhelds. So I want to take a look at it from an emulation perspective to see how well it does on that part, and then we can compare it to these other devices. Rather than talk about platforms that we know will work, meaning Game Boys, NES, Super Nintendo, and everything under PlayStation 1, I want to move right past those. The fact is, on all three consoles, those will play just fine, with the slight edge going to the RG405M for having that aspect ratio we talked about earlier. But if you don't mind the black bars, then the better screen on the G Cloud makes it look fantastic when it's just upscaled higher to a 7-inch device. It looks great. But while we're here, let's take a look and see how the actual D-pad performs for those games, as that's pretty important. And doing my normal Pokemon test, the idea here is you want to see if the character will move in a different direction than the way that I'm pushing down on the D-pad. And it passes with flying colors. The character goes in the same direction of the D-pad that I'm pushing down on. And just anecdotally, I've had a lot of fun using this D-pad. It's a loose D-pad and seems to just pivot nicely. And for me, that's something that I like quite a bit. So let's start with Nintendo 64. The Odin and RG405M both play Nintendo 64 basically perfectly, with the Odin able to be upscaled. So let's take a look at the G Cloud then. Starting off with the native resolution, and Mario Tennis is always my test game. If Mario Tennis runs, everything does, basically. We have to use Glide N64 Accurate, as Glide 64 Accurate, the default emulation profile, has a weird box glitch in the top left. And we're using M64 Plus FC from the Play Store here. But the game runs perfectly here, with no issues, so we know Nintendo 64 is playable. So what about upscaling? Let's try 1080p. And it's not strong enough with accurate emulation. Maybe could get there with a fast profile or one with more sacrifices, but that's not what I'm looking for. Even with widescreen and back to 480p, it still can't run here. But Mario Tennis is the top end, so let's see how Super Mario 64 does instead. And yeah, 480p with widescreen runs just great. So let's bump it up to 1080p, and now we see that it's choppy, but if we get rid of the widescreen hack, everything runs just great at 1080p. So there you go. As usual with a Nintendo 64, you have some games that'll run extremely well and upscaled, and then some that need to be run at their native resolution still. But the G Cloud is no slouch when it comes to Nintendo 64 emulation. Let's look at the PlayStation Portable next, and it runs really well. This device should be perfect for PlayStation Portable given the 16:9 aspect ratio that we talked about earlier. And so we're at 2 times resolution here, and there's been some hiccups here and there, but for the most part, it's smooth sailing. The Odin Lite would be the same here, while the RG405M wouldn't be a great experience as you get the letterbox effect due to the smaller aspect ratio and smaller text, so it wouldn't be super good in comparison. I did a video on GameCube emulation, so I'm not going to get into that really here, or even Wii. Can the G Cloud play GameCube games and Wii games? Yeah, definitely. Check out that video if you want to see more. All of them though? And the answer is no. It can do some. You might be able to get an idea from my showcase of what may or may not be possible, but I wouldn't buy this device specifically for GameCube or Wii, although you could get some good games to play out of it. The Odin in comparison is very much the same, although it'll do slightly better than what the G Cloud can do. Slightly is a loose term. You'll get a few more frames out of it, a few more games will be playable, but we're just not there yet for complete high compatibility with GameCube or Wii on these devices, and especially under the $200 price point. And the RG405M falls into that same category, with it being the similar performance to the G Cloud in this way. And then we come to the PlayStation 2, and it's going to be the same thoughts as GameCube and Wii. Rather than doing a showcase here of PlayStation 2, I'm just going to show you Retro Tech Dad's PS2 showcase that he did for the device, as he did all the work already. Like before, some of the catalog of PlayStation 2 games are playable here. But again, I wouldn't consider buying this for PlayStation 2. The Odin Lite and RG405M are very similar here as well, and I'm sure you're starting to see a pattern. Link in the description to Retro Tech Dad's awesome video on this. I'd suggest you check it out. And lastly, just to let you know, Nintendo Switch just does not run well. There's not enough RAM here for it to do really anything good on the emulation front, but that might change in the future. So overall, for $190 here, you're basically getting a package that's sort of on par with the Anbernic RG405M, but with a larger screen and a much nicer screen. The controls and all of that feel fantastic as well. We didn't really talk about it too much, but the analog sticks, the analog triggers, the actual triggers, the buttons themselves, everything feels fantastic on this device. There's a lot of good here, and I can easily recommend it to anybody that's looking for a device if it happens to drop to this price point and you want something that can do what the G Cloud does while knowing that, hey, it's not portable. You can't take this out with you and go on the road with it. It's just not that great for it. And so that comes to the issue that I have with it and why that I personally won't be keeping it. It just doesn't fit a niche or a need for me right now. I have smaller devices that I can bring with me when I go out on the go. And then when I'm home, I have something like my ROG Ally or my GPD Win 4, which is about to be arriving. And so those will fit the need for what this does more than what it does. So it's a bit of a weird situation just because of the size of it that, for me personally, it's just not necessary. But that's not to say that I wouldn't recommend it or wouldn't suggest it, because I could definitely see it being a useful product for anybody else that wants something like this. And so if you want an extremely light, comfortable, and an awesome screen device that you can just carry around the house with you and do streaming as well as some light emulation like I showed today, then yeah, grab the G Cloud if it goes on sale, it'll be perfect. Share in the comments below, is the Logitech G Cloud on your radar? As far as I know, everyone that's ever owned one actually likes it quite a bit. So I'm curious, do you have one? Do you like it? Is it something that you want to pick up if it does go on sale? Let me know in the comments. Please don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.